Long before dinosaurs left their first footprints in the mud, Earth was already home to entire worlds of monsters, now almost completely forgotten. Their bones lie buried in rocks older than any forest, their faces locked in stone, their names known only to those who study fossils under flickering lab lights. These were the rulers of deep time, creatures that walked, swam, and hunted in the millions of years before dinosaurs ever took shape. Their world was harsh, unstable, and breathtaking, a planet still learning how to host life, and often punishing it for trying. In the ancient silence of the late Paleozoic era, continents collided to form one vast landmass, Pangaea. It stretched from pole to pole, a landscape of deserts, volcanic ranges, and seasonal floods. The air was heavy with carbon dioxide, the oxygen low, and the days long and hot. Yet life thrived. Amphibians the size of crocodiles lurked in swamps. Reptiles with sails of bone rising from their backs warmed themselves under an orange sundae. In the seas, armored fish and early sharks fought in dim green light. This was the age of experiment, the time when nature was still testing ideas. Some of these experiments worked and became the ancestors of the animals we know. Others perished completely, leaving behind only a whisper in stone. Among the first rulers of the land were the synapsids, a lineage that would one day lead to mammals. They looked nothing like the gentle creatures of today. Their teeth were serrated like knives, their jaws strong enough to crack bone, and their gait powerful but awkward. One of the largest was time's Dimetrodon asterisk, a predator that grew over 3 meters long, with a sail of spines rising from its back. To early fossil hunters, asterisk Dimetrodon times looked like a dinosaur, but it lived nearly 50 million years before the first dinosaurs appeared. Its world was dry and sunbaked, with scattered oases where amphibians gathered to lay eggs. Asterisk Dimetrodon times ruled these oases like a silent assassin. Its sail might have helped it absorb heat from the morning sun, allowing it to strike before other animals had fully warmed up. Fossils show sharp teeth worn down by constant feeding and skeletons of prey crushed beneath its claws. Yet time's Dimetrodon times was only one of many forgotten monsters. The Permian period, which began nearly 300 million years ago, hosted predators and herbivores stranger still. There was time's Edaphosaurus asterisk, a plant eater with a similar sail, showing how nature can reuse designs in opposite ways. There were time's Gorgonopsians asterisk, sleek saber-toothed hunters that stalked the plains of South Africa, with jaws that opened nearly 70 degrees. Fossil skulls show massive canine teeth, each serrated edge once slicing through the hides of early reptiles. These beasts were fierce, intelligent, and efficient, yet doomed, because even as they ruled, the earth beneath them was preparing its most devastating test. Around 252 million years ago, the ground began to split open in what is now Siberia. For hundreds of thousands of years, volcanoes erupted in waves, releasing carbon dioxide, methane, and sulfur into the air. The planet's temperature soared. Oceans turned acidic and lost their oxygen. Rivers dried up. Almost everything alive began to die. Geologists call it the Great Dying, the Permian, Triassic extinction, the worst catastrophe life has ever faced. More than 90% of all species vanished. Forests turned to ash, coral reefs dissolved, and entire lineages disappeared forever. The great predators like time's Gorgonops times and time's Dimetrodon times fell with them. It was as if the planet had pressed a reset button on life. But extinction, as always, is both an end and a beginning. When the Permian ended, Earth entered a long silence. For millions of years afterward, evolution started over, reshaping survivors into new forms. The synapsids that endured became smaller, more adaptable, and more mammal-like. The amphibians that lived on found refuge in cooler highlands. The reptiles diversified, eventually giving rise to the first archosaurs, the ancestors of crocodiles, pterosaurs, and dinosaurs. Yet beneath the ground, the bones of the old rulers waited, preserved in sandstone and shale, silent witnesses to a vanished world. Some of the strangest survivors came from the water. Before the Great Dying, the seas teemed with armored fish called placoderms. One of the largest, Dunkleosteus asterisk, was a monster of muscle and bone, 30 feet long, with a jaw that could shear through anything that swam too close. Its head was a fortress of interlocking plates, and its bite could crush prey with the force of a crocodile many times its size. For tens of millions of years, creatures like time's Dunkleosteus times ruled the oceans. But as the Devonian period ended, so did their reign. Oxygen levels dropped, and the armored titans vanished, replaced by smaller, faster fish with jaws made of bone rather than armor. The giant killers of one age became the fossils of the next. Fossil beds scattered across the world tell this story in detail. In cliffs near Cleveland, Ohio, the remains of Dunkleosteus times lie in dark shale, once formed from seabeds where little oxygen reached. In the dry Karoo Basin of South Africa, skeletons of Gorgonopsians times rest, curled as if they fell asleep and never woke. In the red rocks of Texas, Dimetrodon times bones are found near those of its prey amphibians and smaller reptiles trapped together in what was once a drying pond. Each discovery adds another verse to the story of those lost empires before the dinosaurs, and each reminds us that dominance is temporary. Scientists studying these fossils use more than chisels and brushes now. They use CT scanners to peer inside skulls, isotopic analysis to reconstruct climates, and 3D models to test how muscles and joints worked. These tools have shown that the so-called primitive beasts of the Paleozoic were anything but simple. Their brains were complex, their sensory systems acute, and their behaviors sophisticated. Gorgonopsians times may have hunted in packs. Dimetrodon times may have controlled its body temperature like a mammal. Even some amphibians had armor and teeth designed for defense against the same predators that would one day vanish with them. Evolution was not a straight line toward perfection, but a web of experiments, each one unique, each one valuable, even when it failed. After the Great Dying, a few forgotten monsters clung to existence in isolated corners of the Triassic world. Some synapsids evolved into stocky, pig-like herbivores called Lystrosaurus*, which survived by sheer resilience. Fossil beds in Antarctica, India, and South Africa show that Lystrosaurus made up more than half of all animals alive immediately after the extinction. It outlived the predators that once hunted it and endured where nearly everything else had perished. Its survival is a symbol of how life recovers not through power, but persistence. As Earth healed, new creatures emerged. Crocodile-like Rauisuchians took the place of the Gorgonops. Massive amphibians filled rivers where Dimetrodon once ruled. The first dinosaurs appeared as small, nimble reptiles, hardly the giants they would later become, yet their rise was built upon the bones of what came before. Every new lineage carried echoes of those ancient designs: jointed limbs, serrated teeth, warm-blooded metabolism, all perfected by predecessors who died in fire and ash. It is easy to forget how many worlds Earth has lost. The age of dinosaurs was only one of many acts in a much older story. Before them, entire ecosystems flourished and fell, each leaving behind its own lost giants. For every Tyrannosaurus*, there was a Dimetrodon*. For every Mosasaurus*, there was a Dunkleosteus*. For every Velociraptor*, a Gorgonops*. These ancient predators built the evolutionary foundations that later animals would stand upon. Their disappearance made room for others, including us. Today, the rocks that hold their fossils are scattered across deserts, riverbeds, and cliffsides. When the wind moves over them, it passes across millions of years of vanished history. Every ridge, every grain of sandstone carries the memory of oceans that dried, forests that burned, and creatures that no longer draw breath. In laboratories, paleontologists clean fragments of jawbones and vertebrae, sometimes piecing together entire skeletons from shards smaller than a coin. To them, each fossil is a time capsule, a message written in mineral instead of ink. Imagine one such fossil being unearthed. The sandstone crumbles under the brush, revealing curved teeth locked in stone. The skull is broad, the eye sockets forward-facing. The scientist lifts it carefully, light glinting on ancient enamel. In that moment, 270 million years collapse into one breath. What was once a predator, prowling sun-baked plains, now lies silent in a museum drawer. Yet its story speaks louder than any roar could. Those who study the forgotten monsters often describe them not with fear but with awe. There is majesty in their resilience and mystery in their extinction. They remind us that life on Earth is fragile but unyielding. Every catastrophe reshapes it. Every ending gives rise to new beginnings. The Permian beasts did not die in vain. They forged the biological blueprints for the next wave of evolution. The reptiles, the birds, the mammals, and eventually, us. When we think of prehistory, we imagine dinosaurs towering over lush jungles. But if we could step back further, far beyond that age, we would find a stranger world, still a world of giant amphibians lurking in primeval swamps, of finned hunters with armor thicker than bone, of scaly beasts whose breath steamed in the morning heat of a lifeless desert. This was Earth before the familiar, an alien planet that somehow became our own. The forgotten monsters of this world are gone, but their presence lingers in the patterns of every living thing. In the curve of a mammal's tooth, in the texture of a reptile's skin, in the mechanics of a shark's bite, all of it echoes experiments first tested hundreds of millions of years ago. The story of evolution is written in inheritance, not replacement. Nothing truly vanishes, it only transforms. Perhaps that is the final mystery of those who lived and died before the dinosaurs. That their silence was not an end, but a continuation. They are not simply fossils, they are foundations. Beneath every step we take lies the bedrock of their existence. The world they built with struggle and extinction became the one we inherited. And in the dust of ancient riverbeds, the bones of their vanished empires still whisper the oldest truth of all, that survival is temporary, but change is eternal.